We're about to get positive.
I'm going to go with the Wizards, Washington Wizards. I really liked what the Wizards did this offseason. Some people have commented a bit on like, oh, they didn't get that great value for Porzingis or Beal or whatever. I mean, they got a bunch of pick swaps and second rounders from Phoenix. I would say that's pretty solid for a guy that has a no trade clause and you can only trade him to one team.
Yeah.
Getting 4 pick swaps from a team that certainly has the potential to completely crater over the next few years, considering their 3-star players are, well, 2 of them are aging / have had major injury concerns, and they don't have a ton of depth. So some of those pick swaps are potentially valuable. They added Jordan Poole just kind of on a flyer. Chris Paul was a salary match for the Beal trade, and then they got Jordan Poole out of him. Like, certainly he wasn't great with the Warriors, but you got to hit the salary floor by spending enough money on contracts, and they don't really have anyone else to pay. So you might as well, take a flyer on him, see if you can recover some of his value somehow.
I feel like you really shifted from you at Washington. I feel great about their offseason, and then the actual pitch was like, hey, it's not that bad.
No, the reason I feel really good about their offseason is Washington's own picks are going to be highly valuable again, because they're going to be really bad. This is a team that has been picking like 9th, 10th, 11th in the lottery, like just outside that range where you're getting good players. So upgrading the picks from that to like, top 5 or 6 picks every year, because they're going to suck. That's a big difference.
I think it's a on that line of thinking. It's just a massive deal that Washington has finally ended a chapter of insane mediocrity.
Yeah.
And like, I don't usually advocate for teams to bottom out. I think it's an overrated thing that fans say too much, but Washington has been, like I say, like maybe the most boring franchise over the past 5 years, ever since,
a lot of times they weren't even like really making the playoffs. Like, they snuck in as the 8th seed the season that Westbrook was there and got quickly dispatched by the 76ers, like, okay, you're barely making it into the playoffs or missing the playoffs every year. This isn't even like a typical treadmill team where they're like a lower seed, but they're getting in every year.
Yeah. I mean, I think Wizards fans are like pretty stoked about just like,
also,
it feels like a fresh start.
I really like the Porzingis deal. Okay, I get it. They didn't get fair value for Porzingis, but like, it wasn't a real asset. Like, it was an opt-in and trade,
Yep.
Like, Porzingis opted into his player option to facilitate you getting Tyus Jones, who's a really solid backup point guard who, if an injury happens to a contender, he's going to have real value around the trade deadline. So I think that's a solid move.
I think it was a bit shocking to people who didn't really understand the value of Washington's assets. Like, if you just didn't really get what the contract situations of Beal and Porzingis were, it doesn't sound like, oh, this big name went out and this is what came back. But I think if you had any understanding of the actual circumstances, it was a very understandable return. It's hard to really say anything about Washington now. I don't even really like let's take a random guess at their starting lineup next year. It's going to be Tyus Jones and Jordan Poole in the backcourt with Kyle Kuzma. And then
put Koulibaly in there right away.
That's a really, really hard thing to guess.
And
maybe. Probably Daniel Gafford starting. They still have DeLon Wright there.
Mm-hmm. They still have Monte Morris. Or no, they traded Monte Morris.
Yeah, no, he's in Detroit. So They don't have, their only other big man is Mike Muscala, and Denny Avdija is like a combo forward, big enough to play power forward, but probably not going to log huge center minutes. So they're going to be bad next year, and that's good for you, Washington. And I do think Jordan Poole could recoup a lot of his value, just being given a ton of offensive freedom.
They have 3 veteran guys who are, well, Tyus Jones isn't on a long-term deal. You're going to have to trade him this year if you want to, or extend him. But they have Kuzma and they have Jordan Poole, 2 guys that have the potential to kind of have solid value, whether it's this trade deadline or next year's trade deadline, to get something in return for those guys.
Yeah, two
Jordan
guys.
Poole probably not this year, because that's just a lot of money for at best a 6-man offense only player. But
Yeah. They'll probably, help the Wizards get some extra like Instagram followers and like, more
yeah,
fashion photo shoots and whatnot. It's gonna be a bit like I do feel a little bit like, are we headed back into the like, Gilbert Arenas, like Andre Bloch, JaVale McGee, Nick Young era of the Wizards, where just like we're collecting the goofs of the NBA and putting them on. But we'll see how they build it out
I
from
don't know.
there.
Kuzma has had a hard time getting along with some of these goofy guards. So
Yeah.
maybe he won't be best friends with Jordan Poole. We'll see. We'll see.
Well, they're competing for the same kind of like NBA character status, so that
Yeah,
could be contentious. They also got Danilo Gallinari, if he has anything, if he can bounce back from his injury to provide
I think
some level of
probably a
stability.
buyout there.
Yeah, that's more likely. Corey Kispert's still there. We'll get maybe a better chance to see some of these young guys that haven't worked out, like Johnny Davis, and
Mm-hmm.
they might get a chance to resuscitate their careers and avoid the bust term, avoid that bust sticker.
Yeah.
But yeah, and then I don't know. Wizards have. I probably will not watch a lot of Wizards games again this year, but maybe the year after I'm going to start watching Wizards games. We'll see.
Yeah, and Bilal is kind of like the perfect pick for like a guy who could have crazy high upside, but we're not going to know for a couple of years.
Bilal Coulibaly is currently the franchise player on the Washington Wizards.
Yeah,
Just gonna, whether he starts or not, or whether he plays big minutes as a rookie, he is like their asset.
there's just the more I've watched tape on him and stuff, there's just like such a range of outcomes. Like obviously he's
Totally.
got great size and athleticism. Um, and playing in the lower level of the French league, he was showing the beginning signs of some real on ball creation stuff. But like, does that continue to grow and blossom? Like, I don't know. We've
Yeah.
seen so many of these like crazy athlete guys who show hints but never turn into anything. So
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, let's. I don't know if that Washington really functioned as a big dose of positivity from us, but regardless, let's
No,
pivot back.
Washington. I'm very happy for Washington that they're finally like
Yeah.
really rebuilding. I think that's huge. It's a
Yeah.
franchise that needed that. So that's
Yeah.
that's the main reason they're winners.
Cheers to the next chapter of the Washington Wizards. This last chapter has finally ended, and it was a slog.
Yep. I'm just moving up my list here. I have the Denver Nuggets as my second good team.
Cool.
I'm not
Yeah,
sure if you
I
had
think
them in the good or the bad category,
I
but
had them in the bad.
okay.
But
I'll be
not a
interested
big
to hear
bad.
your reasoning. So, what did the Nuggets championship roster? What did they lose out of that roster, or what did they lose out of that rotation that just won a championship? Well, they lost their sixth and their seventh men. Um, Bruce Brown, who was admittedly a very solid player, has like a really unique skill set as a guard who just puts like insane rebounding pressure and off ball cutting pressure. Can guard up, to at least match up against smaller forwards. So great defensive versatility. And he became a solid-ish 3-point shooter this year. When previously his 3-point shooting was a little bit up and down. Like that's a very good player. They also lost Jeff Green. Jeff Green was not good last year. He was pretty much a zero in the playoffs. Mike Malone kept giving him minutes because I guess he was just solid enough defensively to not make terrible mistakes. And sometimes that's good enough to get minutes in a playoff rotation on a team that's not very deep. But they drafted three players that I really like all three of their draft picks. I think that's the main reason I think they're a winner this offseason.
Who's the third? Jalen Pickett, Julian Strother, and
Hunter Tyson out of Clemson.
oh right, yes, okay,
Yeah. So I am in love with all three of their draft picks. Three upperclassmen in college. Jalen Pickett in particular was a 5-year senior. He finished his career in Penn State. He started it somewhere else, which I'm forgetting at the moment. But Jalen Pickett was like all around, possession by possession, one of the most productive players in college basketball history, let alone just last season. He's a big guard, really strong, really physical, who has some defensive versatility just due to his strength and smarts. And he scores. He's an excellent passer. and he gets like a crazy amount of rebounds for a guy of his size just due to his like positioning and strength. So
Yeah.
I'm really high on Jalen Pickett. I think that fills in their kind of backup guard rotation when Jamal Murray's out of the game. Julian Strother is an elite catch and shoot 3-point shooter. He might have some
Gonzaga.
issues. Yeah, I'm obviously a fan because of Gonzaga. He might have some issues defensively because he's a little bit slight. But positionally he's smart. And he played in the Gonzaga system for a few years, so he knows how to ball. But he is just kind of like an electric 3-point shooter who has a little bit of a get into the lane, and he's got a floater game as well. So I think that's a solid potential eighth man option. Hunter Tyson is just like a big forward, kind of like 6'8" guy who's like a 40+% catch and shoot 3-point shooter. Um, so I like between him and Vlatko Kankar, who knows? But like he offers them another option there. Uh,
Don't forget Zeke Naji.
Zeke Naji is still around, yeah,
And still young.
and still young. Maybe he's finally ready to step into that backup 5 spot this year.
Yeah.
But anyway, like I just thought the Denver Nuggets, in terms of what they had to work with, right, which was 0 picks. They traded for picks basically. Like they traded cash for a pick, and then they traded future picks for a couple more picks. So going into the draft with no picks and coming out of it with like, I think the Denver Nuggets did a better job drafting than any other team this year in terms of like the positions in the draft that they had.
I think that you're absolutely right. I think that Denver did make really good decisions with the things that they could actually control. I think it totally sucks to lose Bruce Brown. But we all knew that was likely.
Yeah.
We all knew that that was not a thing that they could control. They had one contract they could offer him. They had like a wink, wink, like situation they could do with him, which is not like very attractive as a player, especially one like Bruce Brown, who's never made any money, never made
Yeah.
any like big money in his NBA career. So that was always vulnerable. But I mean, Bruce Brown rules. He was such like for a guard coming off the bench. He was one of the most versatile like impact players in the NBA. Like he was creating off the bounce. He was just cutting off Jokic. He had so much chemistry with Jokic just in terms of like a guy that can function as a rim runner sometimes. He had a big 3 off the dribble like against Miami where you're just like, oh my God, who are you? So I'm sad that Bruce Brown is not playing with Nikola Jokic anymore. But again, we all knew that was happening. It's pretty clear that Denver has decided that like, look, we've got this maxed out team around our 4 best players. We need to hit on cheap young pieces. That's like the only way we keep this going. And they wanted to give themselves as many rolls of the dice as they could in their limited position. They did a great job of that. And they now do have this big, fat, roster of the stable of young players. And all they need is a few of them to pop.
Yeah.
I don't hear quite enough Christian Brown mentions.
Yeah, one of them is already Pop Bean. They have another Brown.
Like he was amazing in the playoffs as like extremely fierce and versatile point of attack defender. Absolutely swallowed up Jimmy Butler on several possessions in the finals. I'm just like, what more could you possibly ask defensively from a rookie? And like shot the ball well enough all year. Judging his game from Kansas, we know he's got a little bit more in his bag than he's been able to show in that role. So he can just slide right in, and we know that Christian Brown is probably going to be a very good player for them. The internal development from Christian Brown and Michael Porter Jr. is a lot more important than the end of their bench. Because if Michael Porter Jr. can get healthier and get some of his pop back, I don't think he was up and down in the playoffs, but we're still talking about one of the most dangerous shooters and finishers in the NBA. So the idea that he could play.
It's all about consistency with him. He just needs to get consistency
and healthy, because he lost a lot of his pop last year.
Yeah.
That made him made him a less consistency type of player. But it's he could just get hurt again, and that's going to really tank Denver's chances to win another championship. Or he could like become the second best player on their team. Like he's still a huge talent, and he could also his
Yeah.
basketball IQ could just grow with experience because he's kind of stand out the dumbest player on their team. Just like basic, whenever he makes a basic read, Denver fans are like cheering. So, but he did show some flashes of like, oh, like I can like on a give or go, I can throw the ball to the corner because there's an open guy there. After like interesting, like you
Yeah.
saw him starting to notice things in a very like in a baby way. But I didn't really get the Reggie Jackson thing though.
Yeah. I mean,
That
that's the one head scratcher with Denver's offseason. And I don't know. I mean, I guess I maybe have too much confidence in Jalen Pickett. I'm just struggling to see a world in which he's not really good and productive
yeah, yeah, and
coming
he
in
could
as a
really
rookie.
like yeah, and I mean he could do some of the things Bruce Brown did. It's just really hard with rookies to project, like especially later draft picks. Like you can picture the best version of what they are. There's also this like other decent chance that there's like they're nothing or they don't crack the rotation or the coach doesn't trust them. Like
Yeah.
it's really hard to establish yourself in the NBA, and I never expect like late first round or second round picks to definitely do anything in their first year. But I do agree that they're really good draft picks.
I just
Um,
think if we accept that Bruce Brown leaving was going to happen, there's nothing
yeah,
Denver can do
yeah,
to prevent that, right? So I'm not holding that against Denver. You know, Denver could have offered him like, he maybe you get up to the $26 million over like the next 3 years mark with Bruce Brown,
yeah.
and Indiana offered him that money in 1 year. Like he's going to take that. But I just think like they took a crappy situation where they didn't have a lot of flexibility, um, and they made like really delicious soup out of scraps. So that's why
I agree.
I'm
Yeah, it's
bullish on the Nuggets.
yeah. I want to give a good team now and stay a little bit topical, and that's the team that Bruce Brown went to, which is the Indiana Pacers.
Okay.
I'm really excited about Indiana this season. I think Bruce Brown, like, what a perfect pairing for Halliburton in the backcourt. Like this team still is lacking in like in big wings, but Bruce Brown plays like one with a lot of the things that he does, and just matches up so like perfectly as an off-ball player next to Halliburton. Halliburton
Yeah.
sneakily was maybe the second best passer after Jokic in the league last year.
Hmm.
Um, and so putting Bruce Brown next to him, I just feel like those two players go together and perfectly cover up each other's weaknesses. Like everything that Halliburton is bad at, Bruce Brown is good at, and Bruce Brown's weaknesses are like what Halliburton's biggest strengths are. So with that, I'm just like I'm really hoping that that's their starting backcourt or whatever. Maybe Buddy Hield is mixed in there. I like who really cares? But then on top of that, like Jarris Walker, have you watched him at all in summer league?
Yeah.
Like just looks
I
like
was really high on Jarris Walker coming into the draft.
same, but like
It's
he's
been
taken it up
encouraging.
to another level where he just like
Yeah.
doing things we just did not see at Houston. Like he's just like what are these touch passes he's throwing around? Like he's out there looking like just like a genius level passer. He's moving even a little bit better. He's a little bit more like he looks a lot more explosive in lots of situations. I had some concerns about some of his movement patterns where he's just out there looking super fluid and fit and spry and playing with a looks great playing in a more open system. And I'm like,
Yeah.
so we're gonna get this incredible defender next to Miles Turner on a team that loves to pass the ball and has multiple plus passers. So you're adding another plus passer to that. He's been really aggressive shooting the ball from three as well. And it looks like a little like his form is a little bit tighter than it was in college. And I'm just like, I couldn't help but watching Jarris Walker. And he looked like something in between like Draymond Green and Aaron Gordon, but a better shooter than both and maybe a better passer than both. And I'm just like jaw dropping, imagining that being added to Bruce Brown with the infrastructure they already have a place with a rim running, floor spacing, rim protecting center, and the
Yeah.
creative mastery of Tyrese Halliburton. Without even getting into, they have a movement shooter in Buddy Hield. They've got Benny Mathurin in year 2 off the bench. Like it's just that's a very exciting team, and I'm going to have them getting into the playoffs this year when we get into projections in podcast episodes down the line.
Obi Toppin as well.
Yeah, I'm not a big Obi Toppin guy, but like when people I keep seeing people being like, "Oh, he's going to make an amazing pick and roll partner with Tyrese Halliburton," and I'm like,
Are you sure? What about with
"Yeah,
TJ McConnell?
Yeah, that's more likely. I also don't really actually see him as an incredible pick and roll player. He's just not really strong enough to like fight in the lane. He's a transition guy who, like, when Obi Toppin is shooting well from three, he's a
Hmm.
wonderful offensive player.
Yeah.
But the holes in his game are all still there, and I think people watch highlights and think of Obi Toppin as a player that he isn't. Because I'm so you're not watching the full games if you're
Yeah,
anything of Obi Toppin.
I don't think he'll be starting because coaches love defense, right? And so I definitely think that Joyce Walker is gonna get the start at least by the
Oh
end of
yeah,
the season. It should be Walker and Turner as their starting front court. I guess yeah. The one worry I have, Indiana has so much guard depth. They got wings on wings on wings who are all decent. Like yeah, Heald and Neesmith and Matherin. One of those guys is going to be okay. Maybe Ben Shepherd is good out of the gate. He's another older college player coming in. So
yeah.
I guess the only worry is kind of like their backup front court. Yeah, I haven't been overly impressed with Isaiah Jackson early on in his career, and
Isaiah Jackson and Jalen Smith, and they've got these
Jordan
kind of funny
Nwora
skinny
is
centers.
is just one of those guys. I'm not really sure if he has the basketball IQ to really play in the
Yeah,
NBA. Um,
we're
but I
getting
mean,
kind of deep into their rotation at this
yeah,
point.
no, I know. I just other than the backup front court positions, that's not like the make or break for a team necessarily. I do really like the Pacers as well.
Yeah. So I'm going to bounce over to the Oklahoma City Thunder.
Oh yeah, I love the Thunder's future. I mean, their offseason was okay. I guess like the most exciting move that they did was they took on Berton's contract to move up 2 spots in the draft. But
Yeah.
I mean, they got their guy, and I I was not crazy high on Kason Wallace coming into the draft, but his combine measurements were better than we thought they were going to be. Um,
Mm-hmm.
his wingspan is longer. He's a little bit taller. He's a little bit bulkier than it was reported that he was earlier in the year. So he went from
Yep.
being what we thought, or what I thought was a small guard, because that's what we were being told, um, to being like a 6'5" guy with a plus wingspan. Um,
Yeah.
and pretty
I think
strong as well. So like I feel a lot better about that draft pick, and I feel a lot better about Sam Presti's ability to discover and draft talent. So the fact that OKC was so set on getting him
yeah.
is a good indication. Yeah,
They also brought in Vasily Micic,
yeah,
who Daryl Moore, sorry, that Sam Presti has been like chasing for years, trying to get him to sign. They finally convinced him to come over.
yep. Euro
I
League
just think,
MVP from 2 years ago.
yeah, 29-year-old, so not like not young, but not quite old yet.
Yep.
Seems like a good. If he was going to make an NBA appearance, this was going to be it. They pivoted from Patty Mills into Usman Garuba, who's an old prospect I like that hasn't really gotten a chance, but like really high level defender, who might find a home here. We'll see.
We'll see, because OKC is currently rostering like 20 players, so
Yeah, that's true. I mean, he
not
could
all
be
of
waived
these
before the
guys are
season
gonna
starts.
make the team. But
Yeah, same with their second round pick, Keontae Johnson. But there's a lot of good waiving
they
candidates like
signed him
Ty
to a
Washington.
two-way, so he'll be on the team.
Okay, cool. Ty Washington and what's left of Victor Oladipo, as well as Davis Bertans. So
Yeah.
OKC can just like they just are in a situation where they can just do whatever they want. Like they've got a good team now. I expect them to make the playoffs next year if with relatively good health.
Yep.
And they managed to keep all that draft capital. Just like whenever they decide they want to do something with it, they can.
Hmm.
Chet Walker has come back, or he's going to be back and be playing this year, and he looked great
Chet
in
Holmgren
his.
even.
Yeah, sorry, what did I say?
Chet Walker.
Who's
Although
Chet Walker? Chet Walker is
Chet Holmgren plus Walker Kessler, which would be
Chet
an awesome player.
Walker. Chet Walker played with Wilt Chamberlain on the Sixers back in the day.
Yeah.
They do not have him.
Yeah.
Though
Unfortunately,
that'd be great. He's an all
they could
timer.
use a backup big.
Yeah. No, Chet Walker was like he was like a shooting guard, I think, or like a small forward.
Okay. Yeah.
Anyways,
Chet Holmgren sneakily, could be the rookie of the year this year.
He looked awesome in his one. So I mean, like I was really high on Chet. I think I had him number one overall on my big board that year. I think if he's been able to add a little bit of strength in his year
Yeah.
off, that could end up being an okay thing for him. Even though injuries in your rookie season are not a good thing, and especially for a big guy where you're worried about his long term health, that sucks. But if we get a healthy season from him, I just think like his ability to operate as a finisher, his ability to operate as somewhat of a spacer while protecting the rim, just basically
Mhm.
fills all the gaps that they had on their roster last year.
Yeah.
And Jalen
He's got
Williams,
some proto Victor Wembanyama, like skinny guy elite rim
yeah,
protection.
totally. And then his sneaky, versatile ball handling like is helpful in a pinch.
Yeah.
Like you can't play him like a big because all of a sudden he's just like, oh, I actually love to cross over into a spin move kind of thing. Like, and I can do it if you dare me to. Jalen
You know,
Williams is going to be a star next year,
mhm.
and I just think this team is going to be all of a sudden look like sneaky stacked.
Yeah, I also think if some of the rumors about Victor Wembanyama load management rookie year are true, I feel pretty good about Chet Holmgren's
Yeah,
rookie of the year chances, providing he stays healthy. But yeah, I mean they're just stacked with like solid players, or
solid players
potentially
who can
very
pass.
solid players. Yeah.
Like this is the best passing team in the NBA, maybe.
Hmm.
Like they're just absolutely fully stocked with like elite passing at every position. They're adding case on Wallace and Michich into that, who are both project as very good passing creators. Jalen Williams operated more as a finisher last year, but we saw in college what he could do with the ball in his hands as a creator. Josh
Yep.
Giddey is obviously a savant. Like it's just kind of, and all these guys have like so many of these guys have a lot of rim pressure too, with Shai and Jalen Williams both being able to like bully their way to the rim, being two of the best rim pressuring guys under 6'7" in the NBA currently.
Yep.
Yeah, it's gonna be too fun. So I'm just like all aboard the OKC bandwagon.
I am too, but another bandwagon I am all aboard is the Portland Trailblazers
And
bandwagon.
that is my last good team. You
Mine
know,
as
the
well.
we got excited about the Wizards ending their depressing era. The Blazers era, much less depressing, but it still feels good to pivot into it and for them to
Well,
already have really good building blocks in place.
it feels good because of Scoot Henderson and because of Shadon Sharp, who I am
Yeah.
nearly as high on. I mean, Scoot Henderson has barely played in summer league, but he's looked really good when he's been out there. Just highly competent, very decisive with the ball in his hands, very capable passer, obviously incredible attacking the rim. I think all these things are going to be present rookie year. Like, yeah, he did play 2 years in G League, right? So for a 19-year-old, he's pretty polished as
Mm-hmm.
far as 19-year-olds go because he's already had 2 years of professional coaching and development. Um, yeah, I'm really high on him. Obviously, I'm also pretty high on our other two draft picks, Chris Murray and Ryan Rupert.
I just had one Scoot note before we moved
Oh
on.
yeah,
One
we
thing I
should
really
probably talk
one
more
thing
about this.
no, just like one thing I really forgot about him and all the draft analysis and trying to analyze, like 100 guys at the same time. Like I forgot how big Scoot's hands are.
Yeah,
Like just watching those summer league games and stuff. Like just I forgot. Like oh yeah, this is like a 6'2", 6'9" wingspan guy that can palm the ball and throw Michael Jordan fake passes with it.
yeah.
Like I'm like I don't know. I just think like he's gonna be awesome, and to get him at 3 feels extra good. So, but yeah. Shade on. I just
I
have
will
like
say my one other thing about Scoot is I'm a little worried with so many people prematurely, calling it a huge mistake that Brandon Miller was drafted over Scoot. Like, I hope that's the case. Obviously,
yeah,
um, I just never want to be bullish on a guy like when his rookie season hasn't even started, no matter how awesome he has looked in the G League or summer league.
100%. Yeah.
There's some bad juju jinx potential there, so let's stay away from that. Um, but yeah, like Shadon's looks a lot more comfortable and competent on offense. Like he had a lot of just like crazy. He's so athletic and so twitchy. He can get into the lane at will. So I mean, the Blazers have a starting backcourt of two guys who can just attack the basket and get around anyone at any point. But the problem with Shadon is he was, like last year, he was very slight, not a lot of core strength, I don't think. So he would get into the lane, but he wouldn't necessarily get all the way to the basket. Like when he did, he was dunking over people. But if there was resistance there, he would kind of try to throw up a weird, awkward, off balance floater or like spinning hook shot.
Yeah.
And a lot of those, those were his roughest offensive possessions last year. So, I mean, it's encouraging seeing him be a little bit more like get all the way to the basket. And I hope that translates against, NBA level rim protection as well.
Yeah. I think just being able to start off your offense with two guys that have first steps like that is such a great starting place. Just like, oh, we're going to start off every possession with a defensive breakdown.
Yeah, we have the most
Like,
athletic backcourt in the NBA, and
yeah.
that's a pretty cool thing to be able to say.
Yeah. I actually like I mean we'll see if there's how long Jeremy Grant is on the Blazers for, but I kind of like him being there as just sort of like I feel Jeremy Grant being on the floor you're puts you pretty close to having like a normal lineup a lot of the times. Like Jeremy Grant plus another veteran in a place where you don't have a star young guy. Like if they could get like Jeremy Grant and like a center, they could play pretty normal NBA basketball despite their youth, I think. So
Yeah, and then
and just his
also,
ability to operate as a finisher,
yeah,
it just pairs so well with the young guys.
and then also at some point, the Miami Heat are going to cave, and Damian Lillard is going to be traded there, and that is going to result in I'm just predicting right now at minimum 3 first-round picks, because the Heat can trade their pick in 2026 if they renounce their protections in 2025,
Yeah.
for the pick they owe to the Thunder. A few seconds, probably a couple swaps, and then whatever the Heat can get, a couple contracts, and then whatever the Heat can get in return for Tyler Hero, or we trade Tyler Hero at some point down
Yeah.
the line. And it's probably a player that's somewhat lesser than Tyler Hero, but like that's a decent cast of assets, especially because Dame and Jimmy Butler are aging. So I don't think the Heat are gonna necessarily be awesome in 2028 and 2030.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, we'll see. I'm kind of hoping someone comes in with a better offer. I always hate when a team gets to be selected like that and go into negotiations with this like silly advantage. I don't know. I just
If the
like
Heat can get a decent asset back for Tyler Hero, like I'm okay with it. Like I appreciate Damian Lillard enough where as long as the Heat offer isn't garbage, I'm okay taking the bet that the Miami Heat organization eventually isn't awesome.
yeah.
Over the course of the next 6 years, and like one of those draft picks is pretty good.
Yeah. Though the Heat are very good at scrapping too. Um like when was the last time the Heat really bottomed out? Like they'll put together some janky.
Well, the year before they traded for Jimmy Butler, the years preceding that, they had some rough
Yeah,
seasons.
but that took like a Chris Paul developing like a medical condition and even then like how bad were they? They like their worst season.
They had a
They
season where they were
won
like, uh,
39
they're in the
games in
lottery one of those
2019.
years. Yeah.
Like kind of. They won 37 games in 2015 or the year after
Okay.
LeBron
Also, I
left.
don't want to be morbid, but Pat Riley is 77 years old.
Yeah, yeah, fair enough. Yeah. But there's a lot of good like how much I don't know how much it is
I
Pat
don't.
Riley at this point, but like
Right.
they're
Yeah.
pretty good. I wouldn't feel like amazing about they just have such a propensity to scrap their way. They don't love to bottom out. But it was that year that
Yeah.
they like traded
Well, I mean, any team that has traded their draft picks isn't interested in bottoming out as well. So, but
yeah.
sometimes it happens.
Yeah, they always seem to come out of nowhere. I don't never know why they still have assets. I'm just like, didn't you spend this on this and this on this? And it's like, oh yeah, we got a few more. It's just they're always cobbling together something.
Anyway,
I really like,
I'm
yeah,
just trying to say, like, okay, maybe another team comes over the top and presents a ridiculous offer for Damian Lillard, and that's awesome. But like, if they don't,
yeah.
you know, a
You
couple
think you'll get
young
a good
players
offer
from
from
the
Miami?
Heat and some picks and swaps.
Yeah,
I'm okay with that because it means that we're moving in the direction of building around our young core, which I'm very excited about.
yeah. And they want to get off Nurkic's salary too. I think without without really any big man on the roster outside of Nurkic. Are we going to get to see two-way contract Ibu Baji playing minutes for the Portland Trailblazers this year?
Probably. I mean, I don't think they're going to be very good minutes, but yeah, he'll probably get some playing time.
He's an old draft crush of mine. I just remember seeing like when he was, I don't know, 17 or something, seeing some videos and just being like, oh wow, that is a body that can move very explosively. So wouldn't
Yeah.
mind getting another glimpse of that or whatever. I like all their other young guys too. Like I like Nasir Little, I like Chris Murray, Ryan Rupert. Like there's lots of players there that I'm excited about. We haven't even mentioned Anthony Simons, who is
Ryan Repair's a guy who's potentially a first round talent that NBA teams really soured on during the offseason when he wasn't even playing basketball.
Yeah.
Still not sure why, but hey, we'll take him with the 46th pick or whatever.
Yeah. Anything else you're excited about for your hometown? Any other big Blazers notes you wanted to get out of the way?
Yeah, I hope Jeremy Grant is awesome this year and good mentor to the young guys, and then we ship him off next offseason for some assets.
That does sound ideal. Yeah, so we're going to be coming back regularly with just some, projecting teams kind of division by division.
Yep.
As we go throughout the off season, and there's always NBA drama that pops up, so we're always going to have that to talk about. I don't follow other sports enough to know this, but are the other major leagues this good at keeping the drama going year round, or is the NBA an outlier?
The NFL is
that?
trying, but
okay,
they're not quite at the NBA's level.
Yeah, we just got the reality TV show thing happening over here in ways that other leagues can't really migrate into. So,
yeah, the NFL has a couple of dramatic guys, but they don't have like the league-wide thing yet.
Yeah. And then we'll get into international competitions. There's usually interesting things happening this time of the year. WNBA playoffs will roll around, and really, it's just like it's a good time to be alive as a basketball fan. So,
yeah.
And on that note, everyone kindly remember that ball is life.
Thanks for listening. We'll see you next time.